All right, shalom, 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 and welcome once again, live and direct with your Akazaki Yahoo. As always, I'm giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four corners of the earth. I say shalom, wa, Baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. All praises to the Almighty Yah. Hallelujah.
So be it. Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed, I'm joined this evening by my most esteemed Akinanaya. Shalom, Akik.
Hey, Shalom, Akik. Shalom, Yasharal. Yah cover Israel.
Yes, indeed. Hallelujah. Yah cover Israel, indeed. All praises to the Abba. Watching the news, seeing what's going on. ICE in Chicago, bomb rushing apartment complexes 300 deep, messing with our people, doing all this crazy stuff. You know, uh, all we can do is put our trust in the Most High,
That's right.
behind these enemy lines. You know, it is what it is. We just gotta. That's all we can do. What else can we do? We can't expect to take up arms and fight these heathen because we outgunned, we outmanned. What else? What are we gonna do? All we can do is wait for Hamashiach and put our trust in the Most High and keep these commandments. That's our job. That's our duty,
That's
and
right.
that's what the Most High expect from us. So, man, it's hard. It's hard out here for real. Uh, but man, we're gonna be praying for the nation. And I ain't talking about this USA. I'm talking about Israel. Y'all cover Israel
That's
for
right.
real. Yeah, that needs to be the anthem for real. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, we're gonna do the video review. Slacky, I didn't mean to get into all that, but that's what happened. Uh, but this first video we're gonna get into is called "Terrifying Black History America Has Been Trying to Hide." This is brought to us by Black Stories Untold. In fact, both of these videos come to us from Black Stories Untold. The second video is how America destroyed Black families, the untold truth. So we're going to get into this first one. Again, terrifying Black history America has tried to hide. Let's get to it and get through it. Here we go.
Has a dark secret, one so disturbing that those in power have spent decades trying to bury it. High-ranking officials, judges, and law enforcement, people sworn to protect, have instead conspired to hide the unthinkable. In this video, we're going to uncover 6 horrifying stories that expose one of the darkest chapters in our nation's history. Stories that are so disturbing, they've been kept from the public at all costs. But before we begin, let me warn you, what you're about to learn will forever change how you see the country that calls itself the land of the free. In 1946, something was shifting in Georgia. For the first time since Reconstruction, Black Americans were fighting for their right to vote. The Supreme Court had just ruled that white-only primary elections were unconstitutional, and Black citizens were preparing to cast their ballots in the upcoming July election. This terrified men like Eugene Talmadge, who was running for governor on a platform of white supremacy. He knew that if Black people could vote, his power would crumble. He needed to send a message, a violent one. The opportunity came in Walton County, when a young Black man named Roger Malcolm was arrested for allegedly stabbing a white farmer. A prominent white farmer named J. Loy Harrison paid Malcolm's bail, claiming he needed the man to work his farm. But this act of supposed kindness was actually a trap. On July 25th, 1946, Harrison picked up Roger Malcolm from jail. Malcolm was with his wife Dorothy and another young couple, George and May Murray Dorsey. George Dorsey had just returned from serving 5 years in the Pacific with the U.S. military. At Moore's Ford Bridge, a mob of 15 to 20 white men were waiting. They'd been tipped off. They were armed, and they had permission from the soon-to-be governor himself to do whatever they wanted. The mob dragged the two couples from the car and took them to a nearby oak tree. Then, in a barrage that witnesses said lasted forever, the men fired 60 shots at point-blank range into the couples. In 1946 Georgia, white men could do that in broad daylight without consequences. FBI agents interviewed thousands. They issued hundreds of subpoenas, but they hit a wall of silence. White residents protected each other. Black residents who might have testified were terrorized into silence. One man literally ran into a field to escape FBI questioning, later admitting he'd been warned he'd be hurt too if he talked. For decades, 3,700 pages of FBI files remained sealed, hiding a shocking truth. Governor Talmadge hadn't just allowed the murders, he'd encouraged them. At a rally in Monroe just days before the mobbing, he'd been overheard promising immunity to anyone who could take care of business. He won his election. The perpetrators went free. Today, there's a memorial at Moore's Ford Bridge. This one is made of steel, weighs 500 pounds, and is built to be indestructible. Why? Because the previous 3 markers were shot up, torn down, and thrown in the river. Even now, some people are still trying to bury this history. But while the Moore's Ford killers remained anonymous, let's start with Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, a year when this country would show exactly what freedom meant for a 13-year-old black child named Virgil Lamar Ware. In a single day, this city would witness 2 tragedies, one that shocked the nation and another that America would choose to forget.
And they died in Birmingham, at the 16th Street Baptist Church, rallying point of the Negro Drive in the nation's most segregated big city.
September 15th, 1963 began with an explosion that shook Birmingham to its core. A bomb planted at the 16th Street Baptist Church claimed the lives of 4 young girls who were preparing for Sunday service. The attack made national headlines and became a defining moment of the civil rights movement. But while the country's attention was fixed on the church bombing, another story was about to unfold, one that would expose just how deeply hatred ran in the segregated South. Just hours after the bombing, while families were still searching through the church's rubble, 2 teenage boys named Larry Joe Sims and Michael Lee Farley were heading to a white supremacist rally in the suburb of Midfield. The timing was no coincidence. These rallies were common responses to civil rights progress, designed to intimidate the black community. When local law enforcement canceled the rally because of the earlier tragedy, these boys didn't go home. Instead, they rode their motor scooter to the headquarters of a local political group, where they bought a Confederate battle flag and attached it to their vehicle. On the other side of Birmingham, miles away from the chaos downtown, life went on as usual for the Ware family. Virgil and his older brother James were doing their regular paper route together. Virgil perched on the handlebars of James's bicycle as they made their deliveries, completely unaware of the church bombing or the hatred brewing across town. That's when Sims and Farley, still angry about their canceled rally, spotted the brothers on their bicycle. Farley handed Sims a weapon they had just bought 3 days earlier, telling him to aim at the boys to scare them. But their intention wasn't just to frighten, it was to send a message. See, Virgil Ware wasn't just any 13-year-old. He was a grade A student who played football. He was everything America claimed to celebrate: young, hardworking, and ambitious. But in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, none of that mattered. Virgil was struck by the projectiles in the cheek and chest. He died instantly. When the case went to trial, an all-white jury reduced the charge so that the perpetrators would only spend 7 months in jail. But even this light sentence was too much for the judge, who suspended it entirely and changed it to just 2 years of probation. For the next 41 years, Virgil Ware rested in an unmarked grave on the side of the road, his story as hidden as his final resting place. No headstone marked where he lay, and no justice acknowledged his loss. His family had to move away, unable to even pursue justice for their son. The message was clear. In the land of the free, some lives weren't valued enough even for a proper burial. In 2013, 50 years after his death, Birmingham's Gallery of Distinguished Citizens finally recognized him. Far too late for a boy who never got to grow up. Today, 3 memorial crosses stand at the site of his death. But while Virgil's perpetrators walked free after just months, another would avoid justice for nearly 40 years. Before we continue, if you like the content you see on this channel and want to see more, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. It helps spread our message and bring awareness to the injustices that have been swept under the rug. Bobby Frank Cherry thought he was untouchable, and for 39 years, he was right. In 2002, as he sat in that Alabama courtroom, he couldn't hide his contempt. While prosecutors presented evidence of one of the most horrifying acts in American history, Bobby smiled. He joked with his lawyers and acted like a man who knew the system would protect him, just as it had for nearly 4 decades. But this time was different. Let's go back to 1963. Bobby wasn't just any Klan member. He was a former U.S. Marine with expertise in explosives, the kind of man who knew exactly what he was doing when he helped plant dynamite under the steps of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. The explosion that took away 4 young girls, Carol Robertson, Cynthia Wesley, Addie Mae Collins, and Denise McNair. Their only crime being black in a nation that hadn't yet decided if their lives mattered. But Bobby, he fled to Texas and started a carpet cleaning business, lived freely for decades while the families of those girls could only visit graves. The most chilling part was that he bragged about it. Former acquaintances would later testify that Bobby boasted about his role in the act.
"You know, I bombed that church,"
he told one house painter in Dallas. His own ex-wife testified that he had proudly declared, "I lit the fuse." He was confident for a very long time. But in 2002, justice finally caught up. When the verdict came down, guilty on 4 counts of murder, Bobby's smile finally faded. Yet even then, even facing life in prison, he showed no remorse. Instead, he claimed he was a political prisoner being persecuted unfairly. He rotted away into the afterlife in prison in 2004. But while Bobby eventually faced justice, another perpetrator would escape it entirely. A man with a badge and a gun. I'm talking about Officer Leslie Dean Jones. On March 28, 1968, 16-year-old Larry Payne raised his hands in surrender, begging the officer not to shoot. But Leslie had already made his decision. This wasn't a random act. This was Memphis, Tennessee, 1968. 2 black sanitation workers had been killed due to a malfunctioning garbage truck. Black workers, forced to operate dangerous equipment, denied proper safety gear, paid poverty wages, and treated as disposable by their white supervisors. When 1,300 black sanitation workers walked off their jobs in protest, they weren't just striking for better wages, they were demanding to be seen as human beings. They marched through the streets carrying signs that read simply, "I am a man." It was a declaration that shook the foundations of Southern society, black men publicly asserting their humanity in a system built to deny it. That day, what started as a peaceful march had descended into chaos. And in the confusion, Officer Leslie cornered Larry Payne in the basement of the Fowler Homes housing development. Multiple witnesses saw what happened next. They saw Larry emerge with his hands up. They saw him plead for his life. What they didn't see was what Leslie would later claim, a butcher knife in Larry's hands. But in 1968 America, a white officer's word carried more weight than a dozen black witnesses. Despite witness after witness testifying that Larry was unarmed, despite the inconsistencies in Leslie's story, despite the evidence suggesting a cover-up, nothing was done. For 55 years, Larry's family waited for justice. They watched as the case was passed from one generation of investigators to the next. They watched as evidence disappeared and witnesses died. Then in 2023, the final insult, the Department of Justice quietly closed the case. No charges, no accountability, not even an acknowledgement of the witnesses who saw a boy lose his life with his hands raised in surrender. But while Larry Payne had one perpetrator, our next story would reveal an entire town's complicity in a crime that would expose the darkest corners of American justice. Our next story would put a face to American hatred, a face that would smile for cameras, lie in court, and decades later, finally admit the truth that got a 14-year-old boy dispatched. In 2008, Carolyn Bryant finally spoke the truth. "That part's not true," she said about the story that got Emmett Till dispatched. But by then, a 14-year-old boy had been gone for more than half a century, and his perpetrators had already profited from his passing. Let's go back to 1955. Emmett Till was a Chicago teenager visiting his relatives in Mississippi. He had a stutter, and his mother taught him to whistle softly before speaking to help with his words. She also gave him a warning before he left. Mississippi wasn't like Chicago. A black boy had to be careful around white people in the South. On August 24th, Till and his cousins went to Bryant's grocery to buy candy. Carolyn Bryant, the 21-year-old white store owner, would claim Till grabbed her hand, made advances, and whistled at her. The truth, as witnesses would later testify, was far simpler. Till may have whistled to manage his stutter while trying to speak. But in 1955 Mississippi, even this simple act could be a fatal mistake. A few nights later, around 2:30 in the morning, Carolyn's husband Roy Bryant and his half-brother J.W. Millam came to Till's great-uncle's house. They demanded to see the boy from Chicago. When Till's great-uncle, Mose Wright, begged them to just whip the boy if they must, they responded with a threat.
"If you want to live past 65, you'll keep quiet."
What they did to Emmett Till over the next several hours was so brutal that it would shock the nation's conscience. Eventually, they threw him into the Tallahatchie River. 3 days later, Till was found. But this isn't where the story ends. This is where his mother, Mamie Till Bradley, made a decision that would change America. "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." She insisted on an open casket funeral. Tens of thousands lined up to view Till's destroyed body. Black publications like Jet magazine published the photos. The world could no longer look away from American discrimination. The trial that followed was a mockery of justice. Bryant and Millam were tried before an all-white jury in a segregated courthouse. Black reporters were forced to sit at a separate table. The local sheriff greeted black spectators with,
"Hello."
It took the jury 67 minutes to acquit Bryant and Millam. One juror later said, "If we hadn't stopped to drink pop, it wouldn't have taken that long." After their acquittal, Roy Bryant and Millam became local celebrities. Southern newspapers praised their handsome looks. They called Carolyn Bryant a Crossroads Marilyn Monroe, all to make a mockery of Emmett Till and to dehumanize the loss of life of a young black man. During the trial, white spectators treated it like entertainment, bringing their children and picnic baskets, while black observers watched in fear from the segregated back rows. Protected from being tried again by double jeopardy, Bryant and Millam sold their confession to Look magazine for $4,000. They admitted to everything. Later on, Rosa Parks would refuse to give up her bus seat in Montgomery. When asked why, she said, "I thought of Emmett Till, and I just couldn't go back." Millam passed from bone cancer in 1981. Bryant followed in 1994. And Carolyn Bryant? She lived to be 88, finally admitting in 2008 that she had lied about Till's actions. But no one ever served a single day in prison for Emmett Till's death. As we near the end of the video, perhaps the most chilling story is saved for last, when the state itself became the executioner. George Stinney Jr. was too small for the electric chair. At 14 years old, he stood just 5 feet 1 inch and weighed 95 pounds. When South Carolina dispatched him in 1944, they had to use a Bible as a booster seat. The story of George Stinney reveals how quickly the American justice system could destroy a black child's life when it wanted to. It took just 81 days from his arrest to his termination, barely enough time for his family to say goodbye. In March 1944, 2 young white girls, age 11 and 8, were found lifeless in South Carolina. The girls had been seen talking to George and his sister about flowers called maypops. This simple conversation would be twisted into something sinister. The police arrested George and questioned him alone. No parents, no lawyer, no witnesses. They claimed he confessed. But there was no written confession, no physical evidence linking him to the crime. Nothing except the word of white officers against a black child. His trial lasted 2.5 hours. His court-appointed lawyer presented no evidence, called no witnesses, made no defense. The all-white jury took just 10 minutes to find him guilty. Not a single word of the trial was transcribed. Under the threat of mobbing, George's parents weren't even allowed to visit him in jail. His father was fired from his job, and the family was forced to flee town, leaving their son alone to face death alone. On June 16, 1944, they led George Stinney to the electric chair. Witnesses reported that the mask slipped from his face as they applied the electricity, revealing tears streaming down his cheeks. For 70 years, this was where George Stinney's story ended. But in 2014, a South Carolina court finally reviewed his case. They found what many had known all along. George Stinney never received a fair trial. His conviction was vacated. Evidence suggested the real perpetrator may have come from a prominent white family, one whose members sat on the initial coroner's jury that recommended George to be prosecuted. But that truth came 7 decades too late for the youngest American terminated in the 20th century. If you want to learn more about the horrific injustices against black people, click here to check out our video on the horrific race riots that occurred in 1898 Wilmington. This was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching.
Man, oh man, what a
In March 1944,
horrific, you know, while we were watching this, I had to ask myself, why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through this torture? I mean, I'm literally boiling right now. And not one of these stories was pleasant, was almost pleasant. I mean, they were all so far beyond anything reasonable. And I had a thought, this is what Trump wants to get rid of. This is what Trump wants to throw out. Forget all of this stuff that happened, because we shouldn't be made to feel bad about these things. And these stories were prevalent, highly prevalent among our people. This is just a few of them. This is just a few. Let me take that down. I'm gonna leave that up there for a little bit. This is just a few of them. All of them make me sick to my stomach, make me angry, where my I'm trying not to say something that'll get me arrested. But this thing is, and I do that. I get into a place where I just kind of laugh, and I just do that. But it's I believe it's a nervous thing. But I just laugh because I'm trying to calm myself, really. And a video shouldn't even be able to have this much power over a person. But when this video is your reality, is our reality, my people's reality, this is okay. I'm gonna stop there. You got something on this side before we go to the next?
To say that it's upsetting is that's an understatement. Words can't describe. And this isn't a movie. This is real life. These things really happen,
Mhm.
and we know that we serve a power that is righteous, and we wonder how is it that all of this has happened. The Most High has made good on His word, and we see troubling times in the times that we're living in now.
Mhm.
Clinging to the Most High, knowing that restoration is on its way. Recompense is on its way. It talked about how those individuals who were involved in the murder of man
The girls,
now man I don't forgot his
the young boy.
from Chicago, Emmett Till, Salaki,
Yeah.
Emmett Till. Those people who were involved. They lived long lives, and passed away. I know one of them passed away from cancer. The Most High is a grand architect, and these folks might feel like they've gotten away with it, but it's not going to be the case, man. It would have been better for those people's grandchildren had they suffered from what they have done. But we serve a power who visits the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. So you won't get away for what has been done. That woman who accused him actually died. Well, I don't know where she died, but I know at one point, back as recently as 2020, she was living in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Wow.
Just fading away. Just going on with her life.
Right.
But I got a script, but I'm gonna wait until we cover this next video. I'm gonna bring out scripts coming out of Yeremiah.
All right. Well, here are those two couples that they pulled out that first story, and horrible, absolutely horrible. All right, let's go to the next one because, like you said, this is difficult. This was difficult, and that it never gets easier. And we don't do it because it's easy. We don't do it because it's meant to be easy. We do it because we need to understand that this is our history, and the recompense that's coming is well deserved. It's well deserved. So I'm not gonna feel sorry when the time comes. I'm not gonna feel sorry when Hamashiach, when the Most High opened up the sky and Hamashiach and it comes down and the heavenly host, the army of Hamashiach, and then 144,000, the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, when they are unleashed to do their thing. I'm not gonna feel sorry. I'm not gonna feel bad for anybody because it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But let's continue to the next video here. This is how America destroyed black families, the untold truth.
What if I told you that your zip code could determine your health, wealth, and future? It's not just a theory. American policymakers and government officials have waged a war against black prosperity for decades, all by their sinister design. What if I told you that black communities have higher rates of heart disease, asthma, and cancer, all because of where they live? What if I told you that the incarceration rate for black people is 6 times higher than the national average, and police are 57% more likely to arrest you in predominantly black neighborhoods? This is all intentional. Even the food that has been fed to us is worse. in an attempt to weaken us and silence our voices. Health, education, policing, you name it. Bit by bit, America has systematically prevented Black people from living as equals, and it was all codified into law by white politicians and legislators, men who feared the potential power of a united Black community. Today on Black Stories Untold, we're telling the story in full, including the government policies that ended up creating decades of institutionalized racism that destroyed the lives of millions of African Americans. The truth has been hidden for too long, and it's time to bring it into the light. The hidden war on Black prosperity didn't just happen by chance. It was carefully orchestrated through a series of government policies that would shape the racial landscape of America for decades to come. But to find out where it all started, let's turn back the clock to 1933. America is right in the middle of the Great Depression, and life is as bleak as ever. 1 out of every 4 Americans are unemployed, and bread lines are on the corner of every street. When Americans tried to withdraw their savings from the banks 4 years earlier and were refused, many were left homeless and hopeless. The banks had betrayed the American people, and American wages had fallen by over 42% between 1929 and 1933. The government was desperately searching for answers. Enter Franklin Delano Roosevelt with promises of a New Deal to revitalize the American people. Social Security was introduced, and the Public Works Administration was created to help create employment and revive the economy. Roosevelt also created the Homeowners Loan Corporation, designed to provide home buying opportunities to middle-class Americans. On the surface, this agency seemed like a lifeline for homeowners facing foreclosure, but beneath its benevolent facade lurked a sinister system that would codify racial discrimination into official policy. The Homeowners Corporation introduced what they called residential security maps. These methods of ensuring residential security were in reality just tools of segregation. Picture a map of your city, but instead of street names, you see a rainbow of colors. Green for the best neighborhoods, blue for still desirable areas, yellow for declining parts of town, and red for what they deemed hazardous zones. Now, you might be wondering what made a neighborhood hazardous in the eyes of the Homeowners Corporation. The answer was simple: the presence of Black families. Areas with a high proportion of non-white residents were automatically marked in red, branded as inherently risky for investment. This practice, known as redlining, meant a lot more than colored sections on a map. In essence, these practices systematically denied resources and opportunities to entire communities based on the color of their skin. These maps made it impossible for Black people to obtain mortgages, leading to a vicious cycle of disinvestment and decline. Think underfunded schools, no sidewalks, crumbling buildings. All while across the railroad tracks, the white folk got to conveniently ignore the gross mistreatment of African Americans. You see, this was more than just a housing debate. This was a concerted effort by white America to deny Black Americans the opportunity to build wealth and secure a future for their family. And it wasn't just about making them live in a different neighborhood across the street. Oh no, it was about to get much, much worse for the Black community in ways they could never imagine. As the government's role in racial segregation deepened, the impact on Black communities grew more severe. The National Housing Act of 1934 and the creation of the Federal Housing Administration introduced the quintessential American 30-year mortgage on paper. This made homeownership more accessible for lower-income people. Great, right? But the reality was far different for Black Americans. The Federal Housing Administration, who created these new housing policies, became a tool for institutionalizing racial discrimination. The combined effect of the Homeowners Corporation, color-coded maps, and the Federal Housing Administration's discriminatory policies was devastating. Together, they created a system where African American communities were systematically cut off from the American dream of homeownership. This was more than segregation. It was a government-sanctioned assault on Black prosperity, aimed at keeping Black people in check so they could never rise above their white counterparts. The true evil nature of the Federal Housing's intentions was revealed in their underwriting manuals. These documents, meant to guide lending practices, contained explicitly racist language that left no doubt about their intention. The 1935 Federal Housing Administration's underwriting manual stated, "Incompatible racial groups should not be permitted to live in the same communities." The underwriting manual even went further, endorsing the redlining of Black residential areas and indicating that mortgages should not be provided to Black families seeking to move into white neighborhoods. But this didn't stop all Black families. Levittown, Pennsylvania, 1957, a residential area with over 15,000 homes, and it sold all of those to exclusively white people. William Levitt, the owner of the real estate organization, was a known bigot and racist. So when Daisy Myers, an African woman with her 3 children, decided to move into the town, she faced immense discrimination. Originally being denied the ability to buy a house by Levitt, Daisy instead bought a property that was being resold by a Jewish couple in the community. Of course, the white community stopped at nothing to make Daisy and her family feel as unwelcome as possible. Groups began to protest outside her house, and some even would burn crosses outside her house, a practice associated with the Ku Klux Klan in order to intimidate African Americans. Despite months of harassment and intimidation, Daisy never backed down. If you want to read more about the struggle of Daisy Myers and her struggle against redlining, you can find her own book, Sticks and Stones, in the description below. Daisy's story in Levittown is just one of many across the nation where Blacks were denied equal rights. And while Daisy was able to live outside of a redlined community, millions of others were stuck living in lesser living conditions. The impact of these housing policies was devastating and far-reaching. Between 1934 and 1962, the Federal Housing Administration and the Veterans Administration backed over $120 billion in loans. Of this massive sum, 98% went to white families. 98%. Black families and other minorities received less than 2% of this financing. This shattered hope that many Black families had. To them, the American dream was a lie told by whitewashed America in an effort to get them to work harder. Nothing had changed since the days of slavery. It was a dream, but a dream reserved only for white people and those deemed worthy of it. The impact of this exclusion was profound and long-lasting. White families were able to use their homes as a financial asset, leveraging the equity to pay for education, start businesses, or weather financial hardships. Black families, denied these same opportunities, were left without this crucial economic safety net. Redline neighborhoods, marked as high risk by government policies, were denied loans regardless of the creditworthiness or income of Black applicants. This practice effectively trapped Black families in areas of disinvestment where property values stagnated or declined over time. The systematic exclusion of Black families from federal home loan programs resulted in the racial wealth gap that still persists today. Even now, decades after the Fair Housing Act of 1968 banned redlining, the effects of this discriminatory policy continue to be felt in Black communities. In the Northeast and Midwest, many of the areas that were once redlined remain some of the most segregated parts of the country. A recent study found that formerly redlined neighborhoods are still predominantly inhabited by Black, Latino, or Asian populations, while areas that were once green-lined, deemed desirable for investment, remain mostly white. Richard Rothstein, author of The Color of Law, noted that while the Fair Housing Act banned redlining, it did nothing to undo the damage of decades of housing discrimination. The wealth-building opportunities denied to Black families for generations couldn't be restored with the stroke of a pen. The Great White Wealth Transfer, as this period can accurately be described, set the stage for generational economic inequality. White families were given a decades-long head start in building wealth, while Black families were left at the starting line, burdened by systemic barriers to economic progress. But this goes much deeper. There's a much darker side of the story we're just getting into, one conveniently left out in history textbooks. But before we continue, if you like the content you've seen so far and want to see more, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out immensely and helps spread our message to the world. We need proper education about the real history behind our people. And with your help, we can make this a reality. You might think that once Black families were pushed into these redline neighborhoods, that was the end of it. But the truth is far worse. Redlining's poison had seeped into every aspect of Black life, creating a web of disadvantages that perpetuated the vicious cycle of poverty. But this wasn't by accident. It was by design. A landmark 1987 report by the United Church of Christ, entitled Toxic Waste and Race in the United States, found that race was the most significant indicator for the placement of toxic waste sites, ahead of socioeconomic status. Communities of color are often intentionally subjected to the brunt of environmental hazards. Let me repeat that. Minority communities are intentionally targeted for toxic waste sites. This is unreal. Are we seriously going to stand by, quiet about this? Who knows how much this has affected those suffering in these communities? Flint, Michigan, a predominantly Black community, was also at the forefront of the news back in 2014 due to the contamination of lead within their water supply. Corroding pipelines and aging water infrastructure left thousands of Black Americans exposed to dangerously high levels of lead. This brings up the question, how many other Black communities have been exposed to toxic chemicals without our knowledge? Where does the rabbit hole end? Even the air in these communities is tainted by racism. A 2022 study showed that residents in previously degraded neighborhoods live nearly twice the density of oil and gas wells compared to those in formerly A-graded areas. This exposed them to pollutants known to cause cardiovascular disease, impaired lung function, and preterm birth. The stark reality of this environmental racism was painfully clear. Black communities were literally being poisoned by the air they breathed and the water they drank. While white neighborhoods enjoyed parks and green spaces, redlined areas were choked with pollution and devoid of these public amenities so graciously granted to white folk. These conditions have had devastating health consequences. In Detroit, a study found that Black adults living in historically redlined areas faced an 8% higher risk of heart failure than those in non-redlined neighborhoods. The lack of access to fresh food and supermarkets has created food deserts, an urban area in which it is difficult to buy affordable or good quality fresh food. This contributes to poor nutrition and a host of health problems within Black communities not found anywhere else. Higher rates of heart disease, cancer, asthma, and diabetes have plagued these communities, oftentimes a direct result of the lack of medical resources provided to underfunded hospitals in redlined communities. Studies found that Black patients at MLK Community Hospital, a hospital in Los Angeles serving primarily minority patients, lacked access to antibody therapies, external lung machines, and other specialized care equipment for their patients. As a result, Black patients with COVID-19 had an 11% greater risk of 30-day inpatient mortality compared to white patients. The ripple effects of redlining have touched every aspect of Black life. Perhaps most heartbreaking is the impact on Black families' futures. Another study found that health inequities attributed to redlining were so significant that Black Detroiters died 5 to 15 years earlier than their white counterparts. What once began as a government policy to help improve middle-class families has led to the systematic shortening of Black lives. 5 to 15 years. That's an entire decade of life stolen away from Black people all across America. Why aren't more people talking about this? This wasn't just neglect. It was a calculated effort to keep Black communities down, to deny them the basic building blocks of a good life. The government didn't just refuse to invest in these areas, they actively worked to make them unlivable. The legacy of redlining didn't just stop at the doorstep of Black homes. It has seeped into the very institutions meant to uplift and educate their children. The American dream of equal opportunity through education was nothing more than a cruel joke for those trapped in redlined neighborhoods. The stark contrast between schools in redlined areas and those in wealthier, predominantly white neighborhoods is nothing short of educational apartheid. In Detroit, The effects of redlining have been particularly devastating. The school district boundary between Detroit and the nearby Grosse Pointe, for example, remains one of the most divided in the country. 3/4 of Grosse Pointe students are white, and the district receives nearly $2,000 more per student in state and local funding than Detroit. This disparity in education isn't just about buildings and books. The lack of resources means fewer opportunities for advanced classes, extracurricular activities, and college preparation. Black students are being set up to fail before they even have a chance to succeed. The ripple effects of this educational inequality have been far-reaching and devastating. Without access to quality education, Black youth are facing limited employment prospects. As one expert noted, when it comes to health, one's zip code matters more than one's genetic code. This statement rings painfully true for education as well. The zip code a child was born into determined their educational opportunities and, by extension, their future. As we look at struggling schools, outdated textbooks, and the overwhelmed teachers, we see more than just underfunded institutions. We see the deliberate and ongoing sabotage of Black progress. We see the continuation of a war on Black prosperity that had begun with those red lines on a map and now has played out in classrooms across America. The struggle for education and opportunity in Black communities isn't just about test scores or graduation rates. It's about the right to dream, to aspire, and to have a fair shot at success. But as long as the legacy of redlining continues to shape our educational landscape, that right remains out of reach for far too many Black children. In 1968, the Fair Housing Act was passed, supposedly marking the end of redlining and ushering in a new era of equality in housing. Wow, great again, right? But this law, like so many others before it, proved to be nothing more than empty promises on paper. The ban on redlining did little to fix the damage that had already been done. Decades of discrimination had left deep scars on Black neighborhoods, and simply declaring redlining illegal wasn't enough to heal those wounds. Even today, Black people face significantly more challenges in getting a mortgage or home loan compared to their white counterparts. Black and Hispanic homebuyers also encounter additional hurdles in securing mortgages. Black and Hispanic applicants experience higher denial rates for mortgage applications compared to their white and Asian counterparts, according to data from the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. But the cruelty of the system doesn't stop there. As if denying opportunities wasn't enough, a new form of discrimination emerged: reverse redlining. This insidious practice saw lenders specifically targeting minority communities with predatory loans and sky-high interest rates. They exploited the lack of lending competition in these areas, preying on Black families who had been systematically denied access to fair financial services. The impact of these practices was devastating. In the 1980s, investigative reporter Bill Dedman exposed how Atlanta banks would readily lend in lower-income white neighborhoods, but refused to do so in middle-income or even upper-income Black areas. Dedman, conducting a 5-year survey in the Atlanta metro area, found that Blacks are rejected more than twice as often as whites when they apply for home loans at America's Savings and Loans, according to government records of $1 trillion in loan applications analyzed by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The records of 10 million applications from every savings and loan in the country reveal a lending gap so pervasive and so wide that in much of the country, high-income Blacks are rejected at the same rate as low-income whites. This stark disparity revealed the ugly truth that race, not income or creditworthiness, was the determining factor in these lending practices. As recently as 2015, banks were caught conducting these reverse redlining with little to no consequences. This lack of any sort of accountability for these banks has led to a surge in predatory lending, with banks offering loans they know borrowers won't be able to repay. Despite laws meant to ensure equality, the reality for Black Americans remains one of systemic discrimination and economic exploitation. The legacy of redlining continues, not just in the segregated neighborhoods it created, but in the ongoing practices that continue to deny Black families the opportunity to build wealth and secure their futures. As the illusion of progress crumbled, a new threat emerged from the shadows of redlining's legacy. The very neighborhoods that had been starved of resources and opportunity now faced yet another form of oppression: over-policing. The redline neighborhoods, already struggling under the weight of economic neglect, had become targets for aggressive policing tactics. Police departments, fueled by racist stereotypes and biased policies, turned these communities into virtual war zones. Black people were arrested at a rate 5.36 times that of white people. Gene Demby from NPR puts it bluntly: housing segregation means we are having vastly different experiences with crime and vastly different experiences with policing. This means that simply living in a certain area could make you a target for police harassment. In these over-policed areas, residents find themselves caught in a suffocating web of surveillance and suspicion. Stop and frisk practices become routine, with Black individuals subjected to humiliating searches based on nothing except the color of their skin. The constant threat of police interaction helps add to an atmosphere of fear and distrust, once again reinforcing racist Black stereotypes. This over-policing doesn't make these neighborhoods safer. Instead, it creates a toxic environment where residents can't trust the very people sworn to protect them. As we look at the legacy of redlining and its impact on policing, we see a system designed to perpetuate inequality. The same neighborhoods that were denied economic opportunities through redlining are now being subjected to aggressive policing tactics that further hinder their ability to thrive. The over-policing of redlined neighborhoods stands as a stark reminder of how deeply entrenched racism is in American institutions. It shows us that the lines drawn on maps decades ago continue to shape the lives of Black Americans today, dictating not just where they can live, but how they're treated by those in power. The intersection of redlining and policing represents a dangerous convergence of historical injustice and contemporary oppression, a testament to the enduring legacy of America's racist past. Thankfully, efforts have been made to combat the atrocious scar redlining has left across America. The fight for justice is far from over, but in recent years, we've seen a surge of community activism and grassroots movements dedicated to addressing the ongoing impacts of redlining. Organizations like the Greenlining Institute in Oakland, California, have been at the forefront of this battle, pushing for reforms that benefit previously redlined neighborhoods. These groups understand that change wouldn't come from the top down. It has to start in the communities that have been most affected. The Community Reinvestment Act, passed by Congress in 1977, was a step in the right direction. It required banks to apply the same lending criteria in all communities, regardless of their racial makeup. While it wasn't a cure-all, it was a clear signal that the days of unchecked discrimination were coming to an end. In more recent news, President Biden has made redressing racial inequities a key framework for his initial American Jobs Plan proposal. His initiative would allocate 40% of environmental infrastructure benefits to disadvantaged communities. However, many of the programs in the Jobs Plan that would tackle historical racial inequities have been shrunk or gutted from the bipartisan deal passed in the Senate. However, the fight for justice isn't just about changing laws. It's about holding those responsible accountable. In recent years, we've seen a series of settlements that have forced banks to reckon with their discriminatory practices. Associated Bank agreed to a $200 million settlement over redlining in Chicago and Milwaukee, requiring them to open branches in non-white neighborhoods. Evans Bank in New York settled for $825,000 after an investigation uncovered the erasure of Black neighborhoods from mortgage lending maps. These settlements represent a step towards acknowledging past wrongs and working towards a better future. Perhaps one of the most significant developments in the fight against redlining has been the growing discussion around reparations. The idea of financial compensation for affected communities has gained traction as more people recognize the deep, lasting impact of redlining on Black wealth and prosperity. While the concept of reparations remains controversial, it's opened up important conversations about how to address historical injustices and close the wealth gap created by decades of discrimination. Education has also played a crucial role in the fight for justice. Programs like the Healing Between the Lines course at Wayne State University School of Medicine in Detroit began teaching about the impact of systemic inequities, such as redlining on health. These initiatives empowered a new generation to speak up and advocate for change, equipping them with the knowledge to challenge deeply ingrained systems of oppression. As we look back on these modern efforts to address redlining, we see a story of resilience, determination, and hope. While the road ahead remains long, the fight for justice has gained momentum. Each settlement, each policy reform, and each community initiative represents a step towards dismantling the legacy of redlining and building a more equitable future for all Americans. Now that we've seen the fight for justice, it's time to talk about what we can all do to dismantle the legacy of redlining. So, what can we do about it? First, we got to educate ourselves and others, learn about redlining, how it started, and how it's still hurting people today. Share this video with your friends and family, and let others know that redlining isn't just an issue of the past. It's a modern-day problem that requires awareness from everyone. Remember, this isn't just a Black issue. We all lose when part of our society is held back. So, let's step up and do something about it. The fight against redlining isn't over. It's just getting started. If you enjoyed this content, comment down below what you would like to see covered next. And thanks for watching our video.
All right. You know, what a horrible and disheartening reality all of this has been. Redlining we're talking about now, and as a way to basically is furthering oppression. It's further oppression, and through redlining, they've been able to poison our people through the water, put us in the most toxic locations, and also, uh, offer predatory loans and just completely just every method possible they have really come up with to afflict these people, and it's egregious. It's outrageous that these are the situations that we having to deal with, and that this is what we're talking about at this day and time. 2025 is what we're talking about. Um, it's outrageous and it's sad. It's truly sad. Anyhow, continuing. Um, these are the things that, if you're so-called Black in America, if you were subject to this redlining, if you were held out, I think the part that bugged me out the most was when he said high income so-called Black people were being turned down at the same rate as low income white people, which makes no sense economically. You're not going to lend to these people. You're not going to lend to people who can pay it. What kind of sense does that make? It's strange, to say the least. But nevertheless, this is welcome to captivity. This is the reality that we have to deal with, that we have to live with. Now, the question we should be asking ourselves is, why these two videos and all these horrendous things that have happened to our people, so-called Black people, African Americans, we know as the children of Israel, majority of them. Why is it that these things have occurred? Why is it that these people have gone through such enormous steps to cause harm to this particular demographic of people? Why is it that it seems like these people absolutely hate our people and will stop at nothing to try to harm us? Why is that the case? That is the question that we need answering. And the answer is, of course, in the scriptures. Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26 outlines how the children of Israel will go off from their power, and how their power would allow their enemies to basically have their way with them. And this is the result. This is the result. So you show me another people who aren't black, so-called black, that have been scattered through the four corners of the earth that are dealing with situations like this. Because I'm going to tell you all something else that you probably don't know. In other places in the world, our people are suffering probably worse, if not similar, definitely worse. It's hardly better. There may be an instance where you can feel rather comfortable in a place, but even those places, the walls are falling down. So how is it that this is the situation for our people in all these different places? And what will be the explanation? The explanation is simple. It's the curses. It's the curses of the Most High for the disobedience to the Most High. This is what happens when you don't follow the covenant, when you don't keep the Torah that He has given us. This is what happens to us. And that's the only applicable explanation. You thought it was bad when we got off of those ships, and yes, it was. It was, because we weren't even considered people. We were considered property. So for that to happen, and then we get out of chattel slavery, and then we get Jim Crow, and then we get these wicked practices that they had, redlining and terrorism, the Ku Klux Klan, and all of these things, the last video that we went through, all of these things happening to our people. I mean, that's the only viable explanation that exists in all the earth. How is it that these things are happening to our people at such a number, such an astronomical number? That's the only viable explanation. So I'm going to end off there. Go ahead, Akeem.
Kanak, very good point. It would have been I enjoyed, not that I enjoyed what was going on, but the video was well put together.
Yeah.
However, he offers solutions to the problem without mentioning the real solution. And you alluded to that. It's these curses that are upon our people. The way we reverse that, and the resolution to that, is coming back to the Most High in spirit and in truth. For you got a people who know the right thing to do but won't do it, and then you have other people who don't know the right thing to do and can't judge righteously, which is part of the problem as well. But if you could, grab Malachi chapter 3, verse 6. Just want to land back off of what you just said. These curses being upon us for disobedience. Right?
No doubt. All right, here we go. Book of Malachi chapter 3 and verse 6. He says, "For I am Yahweh, I change not. Therefore, you sons of Yaakov are not consumed."
Kanak, right there, sons of Yaakov are not consumed. And it's because of the Most High. You think about the captivities that our ancestors have been in and are and that we're currently in as well. You know, this being our captivity here in this continent. You know, the slavery that we received here, the chattel slavery that, you know, our ancestors went through was similar to what our ancestors had gone through in Mizraim and Egypt. I mean, Pharaoh working our ancestors, you know, almost to death, you know, it was rigor. They served with rigor. It's not Kenaniah's words. That's what the scripts say. They served with rigor. But remember what the Most High did to that nation, Mizraim, when he redeemed his people. You know, he destroyed the world power.
Right.
And you have to remember, the Most High says in his word that I change not. Right. So pull Yirmiyahu chapter 25 if you could. And we're not going to read all of it, but you know, I encourage because we know the enemy is listening to this as well. The enemy is listening to this as well. But I want them to know this. The Most High said that I change not, right?
Right.
But this book of Yirmiyahu, you know, a little backstory of it. The beginning of the chapter is prophecy of captivity, which our ancestors went through, and we have gone through. Right. You read all through there, all the way to verse 11, and then beginning at verse 12, the Most High starts declaring that he will judge the nations also. But verse 12, it says, and it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith Yahweh, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it a perpetual desolation. Well, Kenaniah, that was thousands of years ago. Remember what you just read in Malachi. The Most High changes not.
Don't change.
There has indeed been iniquity pressed upon our people. What iniquity, Kenaniah? Redlining, unfair financial practices, terror, forced slavery in the form of the judicial system. This is iniquity put upon our people. But you know, we keep reading, and again, this is the destruction of Babylon at that time. But what I want us to pull out, or what I want you to pull out, because it talks about these nations too. It talks about Mizraim. It talks about the kings of Uz. It talks about the Philistines, Ascalon, Edom, Moab, Ammon, Zidon, Dedan, Tema, Arabia, all the mixed people. It says that as well, right? But then I want you to grab and I've just had it. Verse 29. And this is the Most High saying, you know, well, we'll break it down after you read it out.
Okay. This is the book of Yirmiyahu, chapter 29. So like it, chapter what verse? What chapter we in?
Chapter 25.
25, so like verse 29. It says, "For lo, I began to bring evil on the city in which is called by my name, and should be utterly unpunished. And should you be utterly unpunished, you shall not be unpunished. For I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, saith Yahweh Zavaot."
Indeed. So, you know, this is the Most High. He's saying that this is prophecy against the nations. He's saying that I will begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name. That is Jerusalem, right? He's telling you know, I'm going to judge my people. But should you be utterly unpunished? That you is these other nations,
right?
That think that all of this has just happened, that they're at no fault. Right. But the Most High says, should you be utterly unpunished, you shall not be unpunished. For For I will call the sword upon all the inhabitants of the Eretz, saith Yahweh Sabaoth. So there it is right there. Remember, the Most High changes not. He did it to Pharaoh. He did it to the evil king of Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's done it to these nations that have spoiled his peculiar treasure.
Mm-hmm.
You will not be unpunished for what has happened.
You will not get away.
I'll yield there. Now, before I yield, you can kill us. You can oppress us. However, the Most High is going to ensure that his peculiar people are not consumed altogether. There's nowhere in scripts that say that for you, for the nations. That's for that is reserved for his peculiar treasure. Again, you can kill us, oppress us. The Most High is going to preserve us. Not to say that I won't succumb, and that they won't do hateful things. I know that I've faced oppression in the form of their financial institutions, different interest rates that they give us. I know my near ancestors did too. They were sharecroppers, and inequality in that as well. With how that was done, you will not be unpunished for your iniquity. All praises to the Most High for all that he's done, all that he's doing, and all that he will do. Hallelujah.
Indeed. All praises. Yeah. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get on up out of here. This is a lot. But we do this for a specific purpose. This is not to ruin the end of your going into your weekend. This is not for that purpose. We do this for a specific purpose. Romans chapter 10 and verse 1, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to the Father, Ha'abba, for Israel, is that they might be saved. We want to see our people saved. We want to see our people set free. We want to see our people restored to the prominence that the Most High have promised us. It's going to be quite a sight when this people who've been subject to all of this torment and subject to all of this
oppression.
That's the word I was looking for. To all of this oppression, that's exactly what I was looking for. When we rise up and we take the ham at the head under Hamashiach, you're going to have the Most High power, the Messiah, the 144,000, the governing body of the whole earth, and then you're going to have the children of Israel. And it's going to turn everything on its head when they see that. When they see those was the people of God, those was the people that JC was. What? Those are that's yeah. And that's what we waiting for. That's what we waiting for. How are we going to do it? First of all, we're going to keep the faith and the belief in Hamashiach, the Messiah, to return to fulfill that which the Most High have guaranteed by blood covenant and his restoration of the children of Israel. Also, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It is so very important to understand that in the conclusion of the whole matter, we are to fear the Most High and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, and all the dust is settled, and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged, or whether we have feared the Most High and kept his commandments. Why? Because this is the whole duty of man. I am your Akazaki Yahoo, joined by my most esteemed Akilanaya, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bashem, Mashiach, Mamalak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel, who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say shalom wa baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, be humble and shalom, family.
Shalom, Mr. Pakai.
All praises to the Most High. Praise you, Abba Yah. Kwam Yasha'Allah.
Kwam Yashala.
And
Yah cover Israel.
Yah cover Israel. Yes, indeed. And Barak Hashem Yahweh.